Hey, Grievers and Groovers. How's it going? Today is July 18th, and we are live from the rock pad. And there's a heat wave happening. It's not as intense as it was last week, but it's coming back. Now it's just a balmy 82 degrees in my living room. But today was crazy. I don't know if you guys saw my Insta stories, but it was thundering and lightning. And that is such a rare thing in Los Angeles. And I know, people don't think that's anything special, but it's so rare here in LA. And I am originally from Ohio, and I loved when you would get a summer storm, thunderstorm, lightning, and that whole shebang. And I was sitting working at my dining room table in the kitchen, where I go live sometimes, and thought I heard thunder. I was like, that can't be. And then it was crazy. And then as I was filming to try to capture some of the thunder, a little crackle lightning came out in the distance. So that was kooky. That rarely happens. So nothing I love more than a summer storm. Anyway, how are you guys? Where are you tuning in from? I want to know where you're tuning in from, what you have to say. A couple things we're going to talk about. The main one being obituaries, because I just posted that great obituary by the parents of that little boy who died of cancer, little Garrett. It was just so cute. I loved it. And so I wanted to talk about obituaries and everything surrounding it. But I also just wanted to say really quickly that if any of you are following me on Instagram, good to go, peace. I was naughty a little bit, and I entered a contest, and I used the Good to Go account because I don't have any other account to do it with. But it was a Paul McCartney contest, and who knows how many jillions of people are going to enter. But the whole thing was, if you want to come to a special event for Paul McCartney in London next week, then you have to post a video with the hashtag under the staircase. So I had to call my young people friend and be like, how do I do this? So she said, literally just do it like you're in Insta stories, or you're going to post it on Instagram and, blah, blah, blah. So I was just like, well, what do I write? What do I say? What do I do? And then I just thought, well, I'll just go behind my apartment to the back stairs. And then I have a Paul McCartney doll from when I went to Liverpool in 1990. And so I put the Paul McCartney doll under the stairs, and then I said, I'm entering the contest. I hope I win, because that would be much more fun to see Paul in London than it would be. And then I, moved the camera over to show the doll underneath the staircase. And then I posted it to Instagram, and then it cut it off. You can't see Paul. So they probably are like, we're not going to choose her. She doesn't get to win. But anyway, you don't win if you don't enter. That's what I used to tell my clients or listeners. Hi, Kat. It's good to see you. I love your profile pic with your groovy hat and your glasses. But when I worked in radio promotions and I would call people, to let them know that they were winners, I would always say, they would always be astonished that they won. And I would say, you can't win if you don't enter. And it's so true. Hi, Sarah. Hello from Nebraska. Woot, woot. Spent some time in Nebraska in my former life as a music documentary filmmaker. I went on the road with the lead singer of Squeeze, and we played Omaha. And then I was in Nebraska a couple of years ago on my cross-country trip. Gorgeous place. There was a really good sunset, I remember, in Nebraska. Although I can't remember the tiny little town that we stayed in. We stayed at a KOA. But anywho's souls, I've rarely won anything in my life. I hope I win the Paul McCartney contest. So you guys listening in or watching in, if you could just close your eyes for a moment and beam out the positivity rays and just imagine Paul choosing my video, or his team. Because who doesn't want to go to London? All expenses paid. I would. But I did win. I think I've won 4 things in my entire life And then we're going to talk about obituaries because I want to hear what you guys have to say. Hey, Sarah. So let's see. I won when I was 8. Have you guys heard of the Jolly Green Giant? Remember the Jolly Green Giant? And he had like a little nephew or son or love child. I don't know. Little Sprout. There was some kind of contest where you had to draw the Jolly Green Giant and Little Sprout or something to do with Jolly Green Giant. I don't quite remember, but I won a mug, a coffee mug. I didn't win the whole shebang, but I won a coffee mug. So that was super exciting. And then when I was in high school, I won a Sony Walkman. Remember the Walkmans? Put a little cassette in. I won a Reba McEntire contest. It was a Reba McEntire drawing. And even though I didn't like country music or Reba McEntire at the time, I entered and I won a Walkman and headphones, the kind that you stick on your ears, which I still have. I never use it, but I still have it. And then more recently, I think it was in 2010, 8 years ago, I won, weirdly, a package to go to Vegas to see Rod Stewart in concert. And then I also won a contest to win tickets to go see the Beatles Love, the Cirque du Soleil Love in Vegas. So I worked it out that I could, when I just made one trip and saw both of those things in one trip. So that was a crazy. I had 3 days at Caesar's Palace, free drinks, free food, free entry to Rod Stewart concert, which was really fun. And then the next night we went to Love. So it was pretty free, pretty fun and free. Anywho, let's talk about obituaries. Do you think that they should be funny? Do you think, did you guys remember, actually I should have posted it, but I didn't think about it because I've been so busy, but do you guys remember there was an obituary with a guy that died and he wrote his own obituary and basically claimed that he was Gwen Stefani's lover or something like that, you know? So it was really funny. Do you think that they should be funny? Do you think that they should be somber? What do you think that they should include? Old school views are, you definitely have to include the high school that that person went to. Hey, Chanel. Hey, from the UK. It's good to see you. It's late. It's 1 a.m. It's 1:07 a.m., right? Or is it 12:07? I constantly get it confused. I think it's 1:07. Anyway, we're talking about, yeah, Sarah says funny is great, right? But, you know, I had to write an obituary for my mom and my dad, or contribute. I contributed the one to my mom, but I wanted it to be kind of more funny. My parents were really, really funny, but I got a little pushback. Like, no, obituaries aren't the place to be funny. But I felt it should be a reflection of how they lived, and my parents were really funny. So we didn't end up making it funny, making my mom's obituary funny. But I did include, you know, where we were going to have the life celebration and the fact that mom wouldn't want anyone to be wearing black, so colorful dress was encouraged. So everybody, for the most part, showed up in colorful, fun, different, you know, colors. And yeah, it is 1:07 a.m. I thought so. But I still kind of wanted to put something funny in there, but I didn't, just because it's not traditional or it's not the done thing. And that's what I'm here to tell you guys and encourage you guys, is that, you know, do whatever you want. There's no, don't let societal norms or traditions dictate what you want to do, you know, because you've got the relationship with the deceased. Nobody else does. Well, you know what I mean. And if you want it to be funny to reflect the funny person that died, I think that you should. Andrea or Andrea, not sure how to pronounce that. She says, I agree. It should be a reflection of the person, right? And a lot of people get judgy over obituaries. I wrote my dad's obituary. Now, he wrote his own, and then I submitted it. And there was a distant relative that felt that I should have mentioned what high school he went to and his job. My dad worked for GM for 32 years, I believe. Wish I could call him up and ask him. And he hated it. He hated working at GM. And he even wrote in his obituary, hated GM, don't mention it. So I didn't. But then, you know, people were like, she didn't even mention where he worked. And it's like, well, that wasn't the most important part of who he was. Chanel said, have to be funny if ours, yeah, if your loved ones were, of course, right? And this is why when it came to write my mom's obituary, this was before I did Good to Go. I was just living a happy bohemian life as a freelance television producer. And then my mom dies suddenly. And then we've got to come up with an obituary. And my mom hated having her picture taken. And so it was like, does she want a picture? She probably wouldn't, but then I think we should have a picture, because then if people who had worked with her in the past, you know, would see it in the paper, you know, all this stuff. So later, when I created Good to Go, out of all of the trauma of doing the death duties, including having to come up with the obituary, I put that in the Good to Go booklet in the departure file. I put, do you want an obituary, first of all? And you can answer yes or no. If you do want it, what picture do you want used? I encourage people, you know, I wrote in my Good to Go paperwork, any Facebook profile pic is fine, because obviously I've approved all of them and they're fine. So anyone that you want. But you may want that picture of you in 1978 when you were on holiday in Hawaii in the bikini. Who knows? You do you. And I always, you know, do you remember reading the paper when you were growing up and seeing obituaries and all the photos seemed like this old high school photo from like 1918, except the person was 98 when they died? It's one of those things. You kind of have to figure out, what picture do you want used, if you want a picture. So let's see, it was, do you want an obit? Do you want a picture? If so, if you do want an obituary, what newspapers do you want it to be in? Do you want it to be in your local hometown newspaper? Maybe you've moved away, you live in a big city now, and you want it like in the New York Times or Chicago Sun-Times or Tribune or something, but then also your hometown local paper. This just shows you, like, there's a jillion questions surrounding just one little duty, little death duty. And that's why I formed Good to Go. And did you know that obituaries are friggin' expensive? And again, because this is a professional operation, I should have researched this again, but my memory, my foggy grief brain memory is that it was $600. Obituaries are expensive. And there's even services that you can hire out to write an obituary for you. And I think that that's around $500. You can Google. Who knows? It might be worth it. Chanel says it's hard, but you go with what they were. I know, it is hard. We ended up finding an old corporate photo that my mom took, probably, I'm looking at it right now. It's over on my desk. It's probably in the 90s, I guess, late 90s. Maybe she took that picture. And I thought it was a really beautiful picture. And so we used that one. I think she would have approved. Hi, Lindsay. Lindsay says, for both my parents, we did just the most basic of obituaries, but we made their eulogies funny and about their lives. Well, this is the thing, you know, you've got a lot of opportunities to pay tribute to your loved one. You've got the obituary, you've got the life celebration / funeral, and then you have how you want to memorialize them. So you've got a lot of opportunities to be somber or be funny or whatever, you know, whatever you want to feel in accordance to who that person was who died. We go over in the departure file, we've got the booklet that I have that has that obituary info. And then I've got the living will called the Advanced Healthcare Directive, and it's called the 5 Wishes. And on the last page, there's some information about what would you like people to remember you by, or how you'd like to be remembered. Whereas in the booklet that I wrote, it goes into way more detail. So it's just a quick question in the 5 Wishes, and then it's more in detail in the Good to Go booklet that I wrote. And much to my surprise, my dad filled out how he wanted to be remembered in the living will. And that's what I turned into the obituary. He basically wrote the obituary for me. And it was such a relief, because you sit there, you know, you've got somebody who dies, someone close to you, and if it's down to you to write the obituary, or you and, you know, a sibling, or, you know, a relative or whatever, and you're just like, how do I encapsulate? First of all, you're in this deep cosmic pain, and then you've got to encapsulate in like this tiny amount of space a person's life. So then you feel all this guilt, and you feel like, how do I do it justice? You feel this pressure, and, you know, some people aren't necessarily writers, you know, and so they think that they can't, you know, they're not a professional writer, so they can't write one, but you can, you know, many family members who aren't professional writers write obituaries. But it was tough. We were just trying to figure out, you know, what would my mom want put in, you know? And with my dad's, what a relief, because he came to a Good to Go party a year before he died, and he filled it all out. I had no idea that he filled out all of the information. So it was bittersweet. It was like being hugged and slapped at the same time, because here I am so sad that Dad's passed away. And then I look at his paperwork, and he actually wrote down that he loved nature, that he basically lived the life. It's gonna make me cry. Lived the life the way he wanted to. Chanel says, when my granny passed, my granddad had a pic of her before they got married. She was 18. They got married at age 19. I bet that was lovely. Yeah, or maybe you do want an earlier picture. You know, I kind of imagine our loved ones in the afterlife, wherever that is, the next dimension, even though I don't feel they are necessarily in physical form, but I kind of imagine them at their peak when they were happiest. That's kind of what I imagine. I could be wrong, but like I told my friend yesterday, doesn't cost anything to believe that. Doesn't hurt anybody. I'm still paying my bills on time. I still pay my taxes. That's what I'm going to believe. Might be a little cray-cray to others, but it's what I think. It doesn't hurt anybody. But yeah, my dad wrote his own obituary, and he said, I loved both of my kids from the moment they were born. I mean, how beautiful is that? Especially because my dad wasn't super touchy-feely. Said he loved nature. He was a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan, which if anyone out there is a long-suffering fan of their team that always loses, which it feels like the Cincinnati Reds do all the time, forever, then you'll know that that's important. And I've talked about this before, but did you know that it takes an hour for an adult body to be cremated, and that you can actually request music to be played? You can have a certain soundtrack for the cremation of your loved one, or they can come up with it themselves. I never knew this. Even in my deathy travels, I never knew this. So when I was sorting out my dad's cremation, I was at the funeral home, and they actually said, is there any music you want played? I was just like, I've got a million questions in the Good to Go booklet that I wrote, and that is the one question that I did not include. And I couldn't, and I thought, well, I haven't talked to Dad about this. I can't talk to him now. I can't get on the dead person hotline, if only, the heavenly hotline, make a cosmic call. And so I thought, well, since he's a Reds fan, just put the Reds game on. And they did. And the Reds lost, which I think is hilarious, because Dad would have been like, just press the button and let me go. Let me shoot on in there. let's see, what's Chanel said? Chanel says, always see my granny as she was before she passed. Yeah. Yeah, you kind of, it's hard, especially if you have a loved one. Like my dad was in the hospital for 6 days before he died. And at the time I didn't think it was anything, you know, traumatizing or whatever. I mean, it was all traumatizing, but you know what I mean? I was just kind of handling it and taking care of everything and having to keep I was the point person. I had to keep everybody informed, and I had to figure out what I was feeling and then what my dad needed, what I needed. And it was a chaotic time. And so I want to remember my dad as he was, not as he was in the hospital, because that's awful. And I've talked to a lot of my clients who've been caretakers for their family members who, you know, can't get that kind of healthy, robust picture of their parent or loved one in their mind. It's just the years of illness and decline and painful things like that. It is painful. But I think ultimately time heals, time helps to heal, and you can, you know, slowly get back to remembering your loved one as they were when you were loving them and they were loving you, and it was healthy, you know. But yeah, it's got to be way harder. And I find myself now, you know, I went to a palliative care conference. Good to Go won a scholarship to attend this conference in Sacramento last year. And I went to see a screening of the movie Extremis. Or is it called Extremis? I don't know. But it was on HBO. It's a short film. I think it's 20 minutes. And it opens with, you know, an ICU and all the beeps and the sounds. And I literally started getting really emotional as I was sitting there, you know, because this was, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think maybe 6 months after my dad died. But that really surprised me that I was kind of having like PTSD from ICU. I had to leave the movie theater. I was just like, this is making me upset. This is too much, you know. But Janelle says, yeah, same. My granny wasn't my granny. Yeah, laid there. It's not a nice thing to see. I know, it's hard. And I always think, if it's hard for us, imagine how hard it is for them. You know, I had my mom's really good friend. He was older, in his 70s, and he was diagnosed with cancer, and he chose not to tell anybody. He told his wife, I don't want anyone to know, because he just couldn't handle people seeing him in decline. And then also he couldn't handle it emotionally, having people, you know, come up to him, you know, clinging, don't go, or whatever. You know, it's an emotional thing. I often wonder, like, do you guys ever do that? Do you ever imagine, like, oh God, if I was diagnosed with some terminal illness, would I tell anybody? Would I milk it and be like, I want a free trip to Disneyland. I want this. I want all of my enemies to know, or whatever, you know? I don't know. Those sounds. I know. It's not nice. But you kind of think, wow, what would I want to do if I was diagnosed with some kind of terminal illness? I mean, on one hand, you know, people would want to say goodbye to you, but then can you handle that emotionally, you know? Oh, Sarah says, yeah, some people just want their privacy. Heard that. And some people might not want an obituary. You know, my granny didn't want an obituary. And we talked about it because I hadn't created Good to Go yet. I created Good to Go shortly after my granny's death. So my mom died first, 2012. Then I was in charge of my granny's care as power of attorney. Took care of her. She was in a nursing home for a year, and then she passed away. And then I was the executor of her estate. But we had talked about it in the nursing home. You know, we talked about death all the time when I was with her, because I just, you know, we were going through this loss of my mom together. And she was kind of the only other person that truly understood, at least in my family anyway, how intense that was. And I remember one time in the nursing home, we were talking about life and death, and she just leaned over to me and she said, "You're in hell, aren't you?" And I just remember crying, and she started crying, but it was just such a relief to be validated and to like, yes, and I know that you're going through hell because you just lost your daughter. She kept saying, daughters need to, live longer than the moms, I'm like, I know. But she said she didn't want an obituary, so we didn't have one. But then I found out later that estranged relatives went ahead and published one, went ahead and wrote one against her wishes and published it because they wanted to get the days off work. So that was a little tacky. But Granny didn't want one. And then I remember asking Granny, I said, what do you think happens when we die? And she said, I think that I'm going to see all my relatives. And I said, who do you think are you going to see first? And she said, I'm really excited to see my dad because he had died something like 40 years previously. She was 95 when she died, my granny. So she lived a very long life. So it was a really long time without her parents, but she still had this really cute picture of her parents, of her mom and dad by her bedside, which I thought was the sweetest. Chanel says, my granny grabbed my hand. She was under, but tried to grab my hand. And they said she didn't know what was going on. I think her soul knew what was going on. I think her soul was connecting to your soul. And that's the thing too, is when you're at the deathbed of someone, I believe their soul understands what your soul is trying to get across, whether it's spoken or unspoken, whether you whisper it, whether they're in a coma and you're talking to them anyway. I don't know. I just really believe that their soul gets whatever you're trying to get across, even if it's just a little squeeze of a hand, Sorry, I'm just like flashing back to my dad being in the ICU. And I'm just like squeezing his hand. Oh. So is anybody grieving out there? Fresh? I'm sending a big hug to you. Grief is crazy. I just had a client ask me, he said, my dad died 12 years ago. Why am I still sad? I'm like, you're just going to be sad forever. That's all you can do. You're going to miss that person forever, whether it's 5 years, 12 years, 25 years. But it's such a testament to the power of love, I believe, through that soul connection, whether it's a relative or, a partner, that soul connection, that love is eternal, You think that? I think that. And it's so true. Even, I know it's a goofy example, but I was watching that Princess Diana documentary that was on HBO over here last year. And Prince William, whose mom died when, he was 12, 13, something like that, or young, only had his mom, and even Harry, for that tiny amount of time. And yet, that was in 1997 when she died. In 2018, they're talking about, I still remember her laugh. I still remember her hugs, and it's true. What a powerful thing. All you moms out there, what a powerful thing your mom love is. Doesn't matter how long you're around, your kids are always going to remember you, are always going to love you. Sarah says, yes, a family friend of mine passed away today. Oh, I'm so sorry. She had cancer, so I'm glad she's not in pain anymore. I'm sorry for your loss, Sarah. It's hard. But I believe if you talk to your friend, she'll hear you. Does that make me crazy? I don't think so. Chanel says, my mom is so devastated about my granny. Nearly 10 years. 10 years. And it's still hard. And at times you can be completely at peace and just like, you know what? My parents were getting older. I'm glad that I had them for as long as I did, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then sometimes you're just like, wait a minute, where are they? Where did they go? Literally yesterday, and this is the first time I felt this in a really long time, I was cleaning the house, my place, my apartment. And normally, a few years ago, when my dad was alive, after doing that and settling in or whatever, I'd just call my dad and say, hey, what's going on? Oh, I just cleaned my place, whatever. And I just read that there was going to be a Robin Williams documentary on TV last night on HBO. And I was like, and I actually thought, as I was putting the vacuum cleaner away, it's my mom's vacuum cleaner, by the way, I thought, oh, I'm going to call Dad, tell him about that Robin Williams documentary. He's been dead for 2 years. What do you mean I'm going to call Dad? Hope he's watching it. He's probably hanging out with Robin Williams. You know, it's just so crazy. Oh, Sarah says, thank you. I appreciate all your input. It's true. Everybody. Yeah. And Chanel says, no, not at all. I talk to my granny, right? I talk to my dead rellies all the time. All the time. Song comes on the radio, old Elton John song. I'll be like, oh, Mom, Elton John song for you. You know, I wish society would teach its kids from an early age to how to incorporate your dead relatives in your daily lives so that it still almost feels that they're there. I mean, I don't mean go crazy, like set another place at the dinner table or anything like that. But I mean, I wish we could change the narrative of death being this punishment for life, being this scary, creepy, ghoulish, garish thing, instead of what it actually is, which is part of everybody's life, just like birth. Shelley Wizen, my instructor for the Twilight Brigade, which is a program, a group that I got certified with, and they believe that no veteran should die alone. So you're trained to sit with the dying. I don't have any bedside hours like Shelley. She's got a million of them, and she's also a death doula. But she says, what is the leading cause of death? Think about it. Is it cancer? Is it heart disease? Drugs? It's birth. I know. It's crazy. Oh, Chanel says, me too, with songs. I know. It's when your loved ones play Cosmic DJ. Always. Chanel says, I'm 38, but feel older. Oh, tell me about it. I'm 49. I'm going to be 50 this year. I don't know if I'm going through a midlife crisis or not. I'm going through a little bit of a midlife crisis. I went back to grief therapy last week just because, did I tell you guys? Well, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I got all my home movies from the 90s transferred over digitally, and I've been watching them. What? And of course, my mom's on them. My dad's on them. It's just so strange. It's like they're still living in that weird dimension of the 90s. I don't know. It's so weird. And it just kind of brought up all this crap. And I'm like, oh, shit, I've got to go back to grief therapy and just get a little top up because it feels like grief, you know, feels griefy. Sean says, not at all. I believe all my family is waiting for me, right? I feel like all of our loved ones are waiting for us, but they're doing their thing. But I definitely believe that. And again, I don't have any proof. I've got a friend who is such a non-believer. I mean, just nope. When you're dead, that's it. Nothing. But I feel like that takes so much energy to believe, and they don't have an answer any more than I have an answer. So I'm going to choose to believe that they are around, and I do think that they are. Chanel says, would love to get our videos taken to DVDs. Well, put a second mortgage on your house. Seriously, it's so expensive. It's taken me a year to save up to do that. It's like, do I go to London and visit my friends, or do I get all my videos transferred over? And that's not even the half of it. I've got so many VHS tapes from the 80s that I need transferred over. That's going to take another year. Or if Oprah Winfrey comes down from heaven and says, I love Good to Go, and then suddenly it's everybody's favorite thing, then I'll get all of your videos transferred over for you. That's what I'm going to do with all of my thousands. Yeah, Chanel says my other app says that too. I know. But yeah, I mean, I had a friend whose mom died, and she was having such a hard time with it, and rightfully so, because it's never an easy thing. But this is what I thought of. So when my mom died, she left behind a bunch of books, and it turns out that, you know, in her home library, just as we all have books everywhere, whatever, I never paid any attention to her books. So after she died and I had to clean out her place, I was looking at all the books, and they were all about what happens after we die. What is the soul's journey? All of these books by different mediums, by John Edwards, by Sylvia Brown, I think was her name. I can't remember. She's dead now. She was a medium that was always on the Montel Williams show, and she had really long fingernails. Not like the Long Island medium, but and then all these kind of reincarnation books and things like that. Dr. Brian Weiss, who's a very famous hypnotherapist who does past life regression. He believes in reincarnation and past lives because that's what started coming up when he was hypnotizing his patients. And in one of the Brian Weiss books, it says that your loved ones will all, after they die, will often come to you in a visitation dream or a visitation and say, I'm fine, I'm okay. And my mom did exactly that. You know, what's so strange is that I was getting all the books and carrying them over to place them in a box to give to charity and to keep some of them. And that particular book fell off the shelf and kind of landed upside down. And then I picked it up at the exact page, and it had that thing or that passage saying, you know, many times your loved ones will come visit you in dreams and say, I'm fine. And I thought, oh, that's weird. That night, I had a dream, and my mom came to a visitation dream, and my mom came to me and said she was fine. And of course, I'm just like, well, it's fine for you, but I'm not fine. I'm in pain. And so anyway, getting back to my friend whose mom died, you know, here I am suffering. And here my mom is just like chilling in the afterlife, feeling fine. And so, you know, my friend who was having similar thoughts over her mom dying, and this is what made me feel better, what I told myself when I was going through that was, okay, so say that you've got a teenage daughter, even if you don't, I don't have kids, but just say I had a teenage daughter, and she met her first love, you know, the football quarterback or football captain or whatever, you know, the most popular guy, it's her boyfriend, and they break up. He breaks up with her, and her heart is broken, and she is devastated. Now, as an adult, you've lived life. You understand that when you're really young, that, you know, boys come and go, and you'll meet somebody eventually, you know. So you know that as an adult because you've seen and lived and, you know what it's like to survive that and to go past, you know, the point of where your teenage daughter is. So your heart goes out to her, but it doesn't really break. You're not super broken up about it. You're just like, oh, I'm sorry that you're in pain, but, you know, in your mind, you're like, it's going to be fine. So you're not 100% attached to those feelings. And that's what I feel our loved ones who are dead feel. You know, they know what it's like to die. They're on the other side. They see that love is eternal, that the space-time continuum is non-existent in the next dimension, that our lifetimes on Earth go by in the flash compared to no time in whatever dimension they're in. And so they are fine. You know, they don't want us to be sad forever. They want us to live our lives. They want us to be happy. They want us to think of them with love and not trauma or sadness. And that's how I kind of look at it. They know what it's like, and they can see it all from birth to death. They know all the answers. And so they're just like, I'm fine. You're going to be fine. That's what I think. I don't know. Chanel says my mom has videos and plays them. Oh, but it's amazing to see my granny singing. Happy family times. I know. Isn't that great? Lindsay says, LOL, my mom had all those books also, and dream dictionary books. Lindsay, I mean, we should have like a new age book party. I still have them. Anything with clouds on the cover, I think I have. I think I own, and I've read, and I've highlighted. It's a go-to when you're talking about death. Anything with clouds, blue sky. But anyway, well, look, I'm going to wrap up. This has gone on long. I went really long today. You know that I always try to just do 20 minutes, and that never works because I'm chatty Cathy. But anyway, Lindsay and Chanel, who else was tuning in? And Sarah, lovely Sarah. Thanks for tuning in, you guys, and for interacting. I love hearing your stories. And that's the thing, too. It's like you guys make me feel less crazy if I say something and you guys agree. And hopefully, you know, somebody else says something and then you agree, make them feel better. You know, it's all just LOVE. Boom. So anyway, all right, I'm going to talk to you guys next week. I hope you have a good, safe week. If you're not already following me on Instagram, I would love it if you could at Good to Go Peace, or if you could just, you know, share my Good to Go posts and spread the word of advanced planning. I hope all of you have your advanced planning done. It's so important to do while you are young and healthy, and not when you're diagnosed with a terminal illness, not when you're considered elderly. And if you don't have the actual paperwork right now, just have the conversation with your loved ones. You know, ask your partner or, you know, adults in your life after this tonight. Just be like, do you want an obituary? If so, what newspaper? You know? And what if they say, you know what, I don't want one? Then you don't have to worry about it. How great. And that's just one tiny piece of the advanced planning puzzle. There's a million questions surrounding body disposition, burial, or cremation. There's a million questions in all the death duties. So you just got to talk to your peeps and make sure it's understood. And that, you know, when something does happen, then they're just going to be able to go into the rote memory. They're just going to be like, you know what? I talked to Chanel about this, and this is what she wants. Or, you know what? Lauren says this. This is what she wants. So make your wishes known, write them down, and talk about it. Keep talking about it. It doesn't have to be morbid. Anyway, you know me. I'm always lecturing about the advanced planning, but it's only because, literally, I am an evangelist because I don't want you guys to have to go through what I went through. That's the only reason I created Good to Go. When I was in the thick of it, in the hell, I was just like, there's got to be an easier way. And there wasn't. So I created one. So anyway, I hope you guys are all good to go, and I'll see you next week. All right, have a safe one. Love you guys. Bye.